Good morning, everybody. Good morning and a warm welcome to MTCC Caribbean's second regional workshop. And we will be beginning in 5 minutes. So what I'd like to do at this time is ask all of those speakers for the opening ceremony to please make their way to the stage.
Um, I just gonna look up on the presentation. I'm gonna need this side. That is not that is Mr. Alexander from St. Lucia. Because as soon as he man look up, I was like, no, that can't be a man, Professor. And I was like, I tell you that. I'm assuming this one is it, or is Anton? Hmm? Yeah. He is 5 minutes away, 5 to 10 minutes away. Huh? It could be somebody else. Perhaps. Perhaps.
Seven. Good morning again, everyone. Senator the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, Minister of Works and Transport, Ministry of Works and Transport, Professor Kenneth S. Julian, Emeritus, TC, Chairman of the Board of Governors, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Clement A.C. Imbe, Deputy Chairman of the Board of Governors, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Ambassador Ad Weisbrook, Head of the Delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Jos Mathikel, Deputy Director, Subdivision for Major Projects, International Maritime Organization, Mrs. Vivian Rambarat Parasram, Director and Head of MTCC Caribbean, Professor Jin Yongxing, Chairman of MTCC Asia and the International Maritime Lecturers Association, representatives of the Maritime Administrations, workshop participants, staff and students of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the media, and online viewers. A very warm welcome to our Chaguaramas campus of the University of Trinidad and Tobago and to the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center Caribbean Second Regional Workshop, Capacity Building for Climate Mitigation in the Maritime Shipping Industry. Thank you for being here today with us. We would like to start off the morning with a safety briefing so you all know what to do in the case of an emergency. At UTT, we have a duty of care to our guests, students, and staff in maintaining a safe and smoke-free campus environment. In this regard, we have a few announcements aimed at ensuring your safety at our facility. Please be guided by the following. The campus is equipped with an electronic fire detection and alarm system. In the event of an emergency which requires an evacuation, you will be guided to the appropriate muster point. The main muster point on campus is located at the western end of the fire ground, which is north of the main building. Your evacuation routes are as follows. Exit the auditorium using the doors either to the left or right of the room. Once outside the auditorium, follow the directional signs to exit the building. Proceed north to the muster point, located on the fire training ground, and await further instructions. You will be required to remain at the muster point until the all clear is given by UTT or fire officials. Please note, elevators should not be used in the event of an evacuation. There is no scheduled testing of the campus fire alarm system today. So in the event that the alarm system is activated, you are required to do the following. Evacuate in a safe and brisk manner. Proceed to the muster point located at the western end of the fire training ground and await further instructions. Washrooms are located just outside of the auditorium. So if you exit through this door, on your right. A health and wellness room is available on the campus should a need arise for first aid treatment. Please note there is a no smoking policy on the campus. No food and beverages are allowed in the auditorium. We'd like you to stand at this point as we welcome one of our students, Mr. Hakeem Jack, who will be accompanying our singing on the violin this morning for the national anthem. Thank you, Hakeem. I think we can give him a round of applause for that lovely rendition. Please be seated. I would just like, before we begin, to make a slight amendment to our program this morning. The Honorable Dr. Lovell Francis, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education of Trinidad and Tobago, is unable to be with us this morning due to an important cabinet meeting. However, the rest of the day will proceed as stated on the agenda. I'd like to welcome Mrs. Vivian Rambarat Parasram, Director and Head of MTCC Caribbean, to welcome you and to bring opening remarks for this event. Please welcome her to the podium.
Senator Honorable Rohan Sinanan, Minister of Works and Transport, Professor Kenneth S. Julian, TC, Chairman of the Board of Governors, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Clement A.C. Imbe, Deputy Chairman of the Board of Governors, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Ambassador Ard Biesbrook, Head of the Delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Joyce Mathikel, Deputy Director, Subdivision of Major Projects, International Maritime Organization, Lieutenant Commander Ronald Alfred, Director of the Maritime Services Division of the Ministry of Works and Transport, Professor Jin Yongxing, Chairman of MTCC Asia and the International Maritime Lecturers Association, representatives of the Maritime Administration's workshop participants, staff, students of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the media, online viewers, good morning. On behalf of MTCC Caribbean, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you to MTCC Caribbean's second regional workshop. This project, the Global MTCC project, is funded by the European Union and implemented by the International Maritime Organization. We are very grateful to the European Union and the IMO for its continued investment in the Caribbean. This regional workshop represents the last of the 8 workshops that MTCC Caribbean had committed to deliver in this region. Later this morning, MTCC Caribbean will report on its project deliverables. The importance of data-driven decision-making cannot be underscored enough. The Caribbean is one of the regions that is deeply affected by lack of access to data to adequately inform policy interventions. The work of this MTCC therefore represents a great start to addressing the data paucity that affects the development of the maritime sector in this region. As MTCC Caribbean continues to establish its regional presence, we are pleased to report that we are able to influence resolutions addressing maritime climate action at the high-level symposium and senior maritime administrators workshop hosted by Maritime Authority of Jamaica in February of this year. This presence was a direct result of recommendations and advocacy of maritime administrations that actively participated at our various workshops. MTCC Caribbean is grateful for the opportunity to provided to be present at this workshop, and we look forward to future invitations. Through the dedicated work of the MTCC, and in particular its technical team led by Captain Sukhjit Singh, Ms. Suzak Balkaran, our Energy Efficiency Advisor, Chief Ezekiel Uwaka, and our Greenhouse Gas Advisor, Mr. Stefan Nanan, we will be presenting the following 4 firsts for the Caribbean in this region. Firstly, we will be presenting our first online voluntary reporting system and database for 16 maritime administrations on fuel consumptions from ships and the use of energy-efficient technology on ships calling in the region. We will also be presenting the first energy-efficient operational indicator baseline for the Caribbean, the first baseline on emissions control and energy efficiency measures in maritime shipping in the Caribbean, and the first GHG baselines from vessels above 400 gross registered tonnage calling at Caribbean ports. We have done well. For some of the countries that have not yet begun data reporting using our voluntary data reporting form, you're probably wondering how. The technical team will take you through its methodology and its results in the coming sessions. Many stakeholders are viewing the implementation of the low sulfur limits from shipping, set to come into force on January 1st, 2020, as one of the greatest paradigm shifts in international trade. Supported by the EU and the IMO, MTCC Caribbean has been able to build capacity in the region to better understand the demands and impact of this coming change. The impacts of climate change are already being experienced in the Caribbean. These impacts represent a significant threat to our way of life, well-being, and long-term sustainability. Concerted and urgent action is required across all sectors if we are to ensure that we are leveraging all available opportunities and mechanisms to mitigate the harmful impacts of climate change. It is imperative for all local, regional, and international organizations with climate interests to partner with us and forge the necessary alliances to reduce duplication of efforts and capitalize on the opportunities for climate finance and climate change mitigation available to the region. Over the next 3 days, with the input of all our esteemed colleagues in attendance, we look forward to progressing the regional agenda for maritime climate action. The preliminary reports of the MTCC, when combined with the industry insights of the maritime administrations, members of industry, academics, and civil society, this will provide us with a unique opportunity to develop realistic implementation strategies. We are very grateful to you for taking the time to share your experience with us. In closing, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Technical Secretariat of MTCC Caribbean, Mr. Tevin Paris, Michael Razak, and Sarita Mahabir, for the execution of project-related logistics, research, data mining, and to our colleagues at the Project Coordination Unit at the IMO, very ably led by Mr. Anton Rhodes. Thank you. And my colleagues at UTT for their insightful research and unwavering dedication and commitment to this project. Thank you. Colleagues, as small island developing states, we must leverage our regional status to ensure that our concerns are actively and urgently addressed. As I indicated 3 months ago, at this very center, we have much to lose, and therefore urgent action is necessary to promote resilience in our economies and infrastructure, with human health and well-being remaining central to our deliberations. I thank you.
Thank you, Director. I'd now like to invite Professor Kenneth S. Julian, Emeritus TC, Chairman of the Board of Governors of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, to bring greetings.
Senator Sinan, Professor Ember, Chairman, Deputy Chairman of the Board of Governors, Ambassador, Head of Delegation of the European Union, Dr. Jose Deputy Director, Subdivision for Major Projects of the IMO, Lieutenant Commander Ronald Alfred, Director of Maritime Services, Division of the Ministry of Works and Transport, Pilot Master, Mrs. Masaram, who's been hearing, Farm, Professor Jing Yong King, Chairman of MTC and the IMO Lecturers Association, representatives of the Maritime Administration, working participants, staff and students of the UTT, members of the media, other distinguished guests. Good morning. On behalf of the MTC Caribbean, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you at the MTC Caribbean Second Regional Workshop. This project, the Global MTC Network, is funded by the European Union and implemented by the IMO. We're very grateful to the EU and the IMO for continued investment in the Caribbean. The regional workshop represents the last of the 8 workshops MTCC Caribbean had committed to deliver in the region. That's yours. Yeah. So in continuing, let me welcome each of you to the Chaguaramas campus of UTT and Tobago, the proud host institution of the Maritime Technology Corporation Center of the Caribbean. As you're aware, the MTC Caribbean was the first of 5 such centers established under the Global MTC Network project of the IMO. Funded by the European Union, this initiative aims to build capacity for climate mitigation in the local and regional maritime industry with a focus on technical cooperation, capacity building, and technology transfer. UTT is now in its completed 15 years of coming into being as the National University of Trinidad and Tobago. In its initial mandate, in addition to ensuring that we did not duplicate any of the activities of UE, which was really already established some 50 plus years, we had to look at opportunities, gaps that in tertiary education level that could meet the rapid development program of Trinidad and Tobago. And clearly, the maritime industry was one of those. TNT is an island, as we know, Trinidad and Tobago. But as important is that most of our products, gas-intensive products in particular, depend on international markets almost completely. And therefore, it was important that the country looked to the setting up of a very buoyant training and education that could service the maritime industry. UTT had the honor of being selected and given the mandate to ensure that those needs of the country, pressing needs of the country, could be met. And the creation of this campus and the program that followed the creation of this campus was one of the first major steps. We are happy that our success in training young men and women who can take a very active role in the maritime industry continues, and we get very good reports from all over the world of some of our graduates or the successes of some of our graduates. So that gives you some history that this was not an ad hoc decision. This is a very deliberate decision taken by the government of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that training for the maritime industry, a very important element that in fact supports the livelihood and the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, could be supported and well supported by having graduates and diplomats coming out of the system that could keep that very buoyant. Changing the subject for a while, of course, and this is part of what we'll be doing the rest of the day. Climate change is imperative to all of us, and the rigorous systematic work being facilitated by the MTCC Caribbean serves as an impetus for the national and regional agenda for reducing harmful greenhouse gas emissions from shipping and the increased intake of low carbon technologies. We in Trinidad and Tobago have a very special responsibility for this. As you're aware, our economy depends a great deal on the gas-intensive industries. Unfortunately, that industry also is one of the prime producers of greenhouse gas, and therefore we have a special responsibility to ensure that we take whatever steps we can take to minimize that impact. As a small island developing state, Trinidad and Tobago has noted grave concern the devastating effects of climate change and its lasting impact on our climate system, which threatens irreversible damage to economies and the rural environment. The MTCC Caribbean, the only one of its kind in the Caribbean region, has adopted a strategic approach towards research in positive climate action and capacity building initiatives in an attempt to mitigate one of the most serious challenges facing our world together, and in particular, the Caribbean region. Notwithstanding the activities being undertaken by the MTCC Caribbean to improve energy efficiency in the maritime sector, it must be strongly reiterated that this cannot be done in isolation. Such progressive actions must be complemented and supported through appropriate government policy and legislation, and a paradigm shift attitudes and behavioral patterns at the organizational and individual needs. With a heightened sense of urgency, we must all act now as the economies and societies within the Caribbean region are highly vulnerable to the adverse impact of climate change, with particular reference to our tourism sector. Since its historic launch in March 27 at this very campus, the MTCC Caribbean has achieved much. To date, some of the major achievements of the MTCC Caribbean include collecting data from over 1,600 vessel calls at ports within the Caribbean region and the successful hosting of several regional workshops and training programs. Additionally, the MTCC Caribbean successfully executed a technology needs assessment, which detailed the priorities of stakeholders in the adoption of technologies, practices, and policy reform in an effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Indeed, the continuous display of excellence by the MTC Caribbean was further endorsed by the IMO at a recently completed midterm evaluation. Furthermore, it is the intent of the MTCC Caribbean to move towards self-sustainability by expanding its research agenda and testing innovative technologies to promote positive climate action in the maritime sector. I take this opportunity to applaud the hardworking staff of MTCC Caribbean, whose technical staff, secretariat, is staffed exclusively with graduates of UTT's Bachelor of Science in Nautical Science Maritime Operations and Master of Science in Operational Maritime Management programs. I repeat this point. The Secretariat is doing this wonderful work. It is staffed exclusively with graduates of UTT's Bachelor of Science in National Science Maritime Operations and Master of Science in Operational Maritime Management programs. So here we are producing graduates that are having a very direct impact on the development in the country. Over the past 2 years, the MTC Caribbean has employed a consistent methodological approach in their attempt to contribute to wider efforts to arrest the acceleration of climate change. This has resulted in the acquisition of comprehensive data, which will be used to inform the decision-making process and map the way forward for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from shipping. Today, I give you the assurance and give the community as a whole the assurance that the university will continue to support the mandate of the MTCC Caribbean and by extension, the global MTC network. In closing, I wish to convey my deepest gratitude to the local, regional, and international organizations and stakeholders, which have greatly assisted the MTC Caribbean to fulfill its mandate. On behalf of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, I thank you for your ongoing support and look forward to future collaborations. Without your active cooperation and continued promotion of the objectives of the GMN project, we cannot hope to achieve the much needed regional goal to enhance maritime energy efficiency. I wish you a productive and fruitful workshop as you continue to work with the MTC Caribbean in mitigating climate change in the maritime sector. One last note before thanking you. I heard just recently of the passing of Professor Colin Stevenson, who was the original professor and founder of the maritime activities of the UTT. So I want to use this occasion to mark his contribution to UTT in setting up this program and to convey to his widow our condolences and sympathy in recognizing the major contribution he made in setting up where we are today. I thank you for your attendance.
Thank you for those greetings, Professor Julian. I'd now like to make a small adjustment to the program and invite Senator the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, Minister of Works and Transport of Trinidad and Tobago, to bring greetings to you, the participants. This is to facilitate Minister who has an urgent cabinet meeting. Please welcome him to the podium.
Good morning, all. And let me just apologize again for the Minister Anthony Garcia, Minister of Education, who was unavoidably absent this morning due to the cabinet meeting. It's a FNGP meeting, sorry. I had asked for a little time out so that I can attend this very important session with you all. So again, let me just apologize for the minister this morning. Professor Kenneth S. Julian, Emeritus TC, Chairman of the Board of Governors, the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Professor Clement Imbert, Deputy Chair. Ambassador Ab Bisibro, Head of Delegation, European Union Delegation to Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Jose Matical, Deputy Director, Subdivision for Major Projects, International Maritime Organization. Professor Jin Yongzhen, Chairman, MTCC Asia International Maritime Lecturers Association. Mrs. Vivian Rambarat Parashram, Director and Head of MTCC Caribbean. Special invited guests. And let me just make mention this morning, we have the Director of Maritime Services, who the ministry does collaborate very closely with. And I see in the audience the two CEOs of the two major ports in Trinidad, the CEO of the Port of Port of Spain and the CEO of the Point Lisa Port. Other invited guests, members of the media. It is certainly a pleasure to deliver brief remarks on this grand occasion of the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center for the Caribbean Second Regional Workshop. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to briefly address you today on this occasion on the Second Regional Workshop of Maritime Technology Cooperation Center for the Caribbean. Permit me to firstly recognize some very important players in this collaboration. The European Union, financiers of this project, the International Maritime Organization, responsible for project implementation, and the University of Trinidad and Tobago, host institution of the MTCC Caribbean. As we know, MTCC Caribbean is responsible for the execution of the two pilot projects associated with the capacity building for climate mitigation in the maritime shipping industry, as well as improving capability and promoting low carbon technology uptake in the region while developing and implementing strategies to sustain the project beyond its timeline. With all that was said previously, I take this opportunity to congratulate MTCC on the excellent work done over the past 3 years. The MTCC has proudly exhibited its skill and expertise in executing this project, notwithstanding the unique challenges of the Caribbean region. The competence, resource, and technical capability required for achieving effective delivery of this project, as well as displaying, as I strongly believe the Caribbean region as a whole is in a much better position to address maritime climate mitigation issues. In 2016, the Ministry, through the Maritime Service Division, provided and endorsed the IMO as we identified that the UTT was well equipped to undertake a pilot project relating to uptake of ship energy efficiency technology and operations and fuel consumption data collections and reporting in line with IMO regulations. The ministry also recognized the university as a premier national and regional maritime training institution and believed that such credited positions and institution in an advantageous position to interact and cooperate with regional stakeholders in the Caribbean Maritime Network to effectively achieve the deliverables associated with the project. I understand that the project has enhanced national and regional networks among maritime administrators, ports, pilots, and training institutions, and the Caribbean has a deep understanding of the latest development for energy efficiency on board ships. I also understand that the data captured and information shared in this project will allow for a baseline and future compliance monitoring with MARPOL Annex 6 for vessels traversing the Caribbean region. This is very important as the effects of climate change are becoming more apparent in this tropical region. We are experiencing sea level rise, coastal loss, intense heat wave, coastal erosion, and a forecast of above average number of tropical storms for the upcoming rainy season. And we can experience that for who in the island as of yesterday. The government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago understands our high vulnerability to the effects of climate change. And although the shipping industry is minor on the scale of national emission, it is being treated with priority to implement the institutional, administrative, and legislative framework necessary for reducing and better regulating maritime-generated greenhouse gases in the near future. Let me take the opportunity to expand a bit on the method and the work that this government is doing to develop the national maritime sector of Trinidad and Tobago. The National Strategy Vision 2030 through Team 3, improve productivity through quality infrastructure and transportation, and Team 4, building global competitive businesses, underscores maritime services as one of the 7 key national economic sectors identified for expansion and further development. Vision 2030 centers on building the pathway to the future that will transform Trinidad and Tobago into an advanced country, sustaining growth and development, and optimizing the quality of life for all our citizens. The Ministry of Works and Transport is currently in the process of developing a national maritime policy and strategy, which will provide a framework to enable Trinidad and Tobago to meet its international obligations as a port, coastal, and flag state. Undeniably, this will provide the fulfilling framework for the development of policies and strategies in the area of maritime transport, port operations, maritime resource management, trade logistics, compliance, monitoring, and enforcement, and passage of pertinent maritime legislation for addressing atmospheric emissions. As I wrap up, let me again take this opportunity to congratulate MTCC and especially recognize the EU and the IMO for their roles in this important project, as it should now become embedded in our culture as a region, and that mitigating climate changes is no longer a choice. It is mandatory and we should capitalize on every opportunity to move towards cleaner alternatives in order to protect our natural resources for the generations of tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Senator the Honorable Rowan Sinanan. I welcome to the podium now Ambassador Ad Weisbrook, Head of the Delegation of the European Union Delegation to Trinidad and Tobago, and once again acknowledge that without the funding of the EU, this project would not be possible. Please welcome Ambassador.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Senator, the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, Minister of Works and Transport. Professor Kenneth Julian, Chairman of the Board of Governors of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Professor Clement Imbert, Deputy Chairman. Mrs. Vivian Rambarat Parasram, Director and Head of MTCC Caribbean. Dr. Jose Matekal, Deputy Director, International Maritime Organization. Professor Jing Yongqing, Chairman, MTCC Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here and to welcome you to this second MTCC Caribbean Regional Workshop. And before I start my presentation, I would like to ask a question. It's a rhetorical question. Are Greta Thunberg and the demonstrating students right? Or are the climate change deniers right? And I had, in between brackets, I had mentioned climate change deniers supported by some Wall Street traders and big business, but I won't mention that because I don't think it's appropriate, perhaps. But I think we all know the answer. Evidence is all around us. Europe is suffering from an unprecedented heat wave. Many countries have observed record high temperatures. In the Netherlands, they have recorded tropical night temperatures for the first time in history. The experts explain the unusual temperatures in Europe through the reduced surface in the Arctic that is covered by ice and snow. And the darker surface heats up much faster. And last month, temperatures in the Arctic were 10 to 15 degrees higher than normal. And this in turn changes the atmospheric circulation, and that brings further climate changes around the globe and changing weather patterns. And in their presentations just now, Professor Julian and Minister Sinanan mentioned the impact of climate change in small island development states. And we see it here in Trinidad and Tobago. The country witnessed a drier than normal dry season last year. And in yesterday's paper, I read that the water reservoir is at a critically low level. I'm told that annual precipitation levels are reduced, where at the same time the intensity of rainfall has increased, which is causing more frequent and more severe flooding. So, to answer the first question, it seems then that Greta Thunberg is right. Climate change is happening. And I can therefore safely assume that we all agree, apart perhaps from the handful of climate change deniers, that we need to act urgently to try and stem further global warming, which would only further intensify extreme weather patterns. And the next question is then, do we do enough? And do we do it timely enough? Are countries implementing the nationally declared contributions to fight climate change as planned? Will we meet the commonly agreed targets? I'm not yet fully convinced. I don't know what you think. But let me give you an example. Last week, the Netherlands government released a new climate action plan after the previous plan was found to be insufficient, and a judge had ruled that the government had to step up its activities. It's more ambitious now. The private sector and citizens alike are urged to take more action. Stimulation measures are proposed to create an incentive for investments. And this does not only help reducing the emission of greenhouse gases and to mitigate climate change, it also offers opportunities for the private sector to develop innovative approaches and create additional employment. For instance, new heating systems, such as heat pumps, have found their way into individual households. Insulation proves its worth, and electricity companies move more and more towards solar and wind electricity generation. And at times we hear people that say, well, the transition is going to be very costly, we can't afford it. But perhaps a short personal remark, a similar transition took place in the Netherlands in the late 50s when the Netherlands had discovered gas and the country was moving away from the utilization of coal as a source of energy. And at the time that required also massive investments, but eventually the whole country turned to gas. So it shows that when the opportunities are there and when the needs are there, it can happen. And we see a new transition taking place in the Netherlands. I mentioned the heat pumps and the insulation. There are new methodologies and new technologies that are coming on stream, and we can exploit those opportunities. So the third question is, I also wanted to mention that also Trinidad and Tobago has also adapted nationally declared contributions, and there are plans to deliver against those objectives. And I believe a panel session on this is foreseen later today. The third question I have is, what can or should the maritime sector do to contribute also to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and make energy efficiency gains through advanced sustainable technologies? Now, in my previous presentation at the MTCC last March, I mentioned there is significant untapped potential to reduce shipping emissions cost effectively. IMO studies suggest that energy consumption and CO2 emissions could be reduced as much as 75%. Many technical and operational measures can deliver more fuel savings than investment requires. It is not only better from a climate and environmental perspective, but it is also cheaper. So they actually make perfect economic sense. I also mentioned last time that in the EU, we are progressing. We are monitoring, reporting, and verifying CO2 emissions from large ships using EU ports, and we are setting greenhouse gas reduction targets for the maritime transport sector. We have introduced the MRV regulation, asking companies to monitor for each of their ships what the CO2 emissions are and what the fuel consumption is, and submit reports, and we do check compliance of those reports. The EU is also supporting and funding investments in research and innovation that are necessary to reduce CO2 emissions. We are working on that through our Horizon 2020 program, and we are positive that it will bring forward the solutions that will help all of us rising to the challenge. The objective of the workshop today is to understand progress in the Caribbean and to discuss the remaining challenges to address before the program ends later this year. Reading the agenda, I'm very pleased to note that this covers a wide range of topics and opportunities, looking at efficiency gains, decarbonization, greening logistics, sulfur caps, and I also note the link that will be made with Trinidad and Tobago's nationally declared contributions. And all this should make for 3 days of vibrant discussions. In closing, I wish to thank the IMO for their role in rolling out the project and for the support they provide to the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center. And I wish to thank UTT for housing the center and their leading role in the project in the Caribbean. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'd like to go straight into welcoming Dr. Joe Smith-Eichel, Deputy Director, Subdivision for Major Projects at the International Maritime Organization, who are the implementers of this project. Please welcome him to the podium.
Professor Kenneth Julian, Professor Clement Himbert, Ambassador at Bisburg, um, and Professor Jin from MTCC Asia, Ms. Vivian, head of MTCC, um, Ronald here, and Colin, my colleagues from IMO, delegates from the countries, students and staff, and MTCC media colleagues, a very good morning. It's a great pleasure for me to be here once again in Trinidad and Tobago. This was 3 years back. I was here with my EU colleagues, just a bit lost, going around the world, setting up centers, where to and how to. I recall all the moments and great moments that we were here in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a great pleasure to come back again. I bring with me the wishes of our Secretary General, Mr. Kitak Lim, who is aware of this meeting and who is very pleased to see this event is happening here. As I said, 3 years back, we were approached by the European Union with a suggestion of doing a project or doing intervention on emissions from maritime transport and energy efficiency. So then all these questions came up: what model we should use, where we should intervene, and which country we should. There were a lot of questions there, and it's quite a bit of unknowns. Faced with the challenge, we started a journey together 3 years back to set up 5 centers around the world, staff them, do the projects, do capacity building, do pilot projects in a very short span of 3 to 4 years. And it was a very tall order to do it. But I'm so glad to see where we are now today, especially in the Caribbean region. MTCC Caribbean was one of the first one to launch and one of the most leading MTCCs in undertaking a large number of activities and also getting the right regional engagement in these activities in the region. So it is, it is a tremendous, kind of feeling here to see that you did make that happen. And just not the Trinidad and Tobago, not just MTCC. Of course, they hosted it. The university played a role, but all the countries did contribute to the success of these activities, what is happening in the region. So first of all, thanks to the EU for trusting in that idea that we can make it happen in a very few years' time. And thanks to UTT for being bold to come up with this suggestion, yes, we will host it. And thanks to the MTCC staff who has been really working hard, and also my colleagues, the project unit in IMO, who has been backbone to all these activities. So it was a tremendous effort by all of us, and I would now call it the MTCC Caribbean family, and that's how it turned out to be. And seeing all of you coming from all the countries, it actually emphasized that the Caribbean MTCC family spirit here, that we are in this journey together. And I'm also glad to see we have the other MTCCs here. We have the MTCC China. Professor Jin came all the way from China, MTCC Asia, I should say, but based in China. We have Panama for MTCC Latin America. I can see Melissa here. So it is also a global network that we have established. And that's why the term Global Maritime Technology Cooperation Center Network, the GMN. So we are in this global journey as a global family, and especially considering the facts what Ambassador just mentioned and what we all know, climate change is a reality. It is happening right now. I came from London, where we had experienced very high temperature the last few days. I heard France, it was 45 or something few days back. And things are happening. So you can be proud that you are contributing to the goals of addressing climate change through this MTCC. And especially for this region, this was very important. When we discussed which region to intervene through this project, and Caribbean came to the top as one of the top countries, because the specific and very unique needs of the small island development states in this region was very important to consider. And also shipping is a very, it's a region, a lot of shipping intensities happening here. And the blue economy based, the concept here, I believe the revenues from the blue economy sphere is more than $500 billion from this region, which I think is around, I was told, around 15 to 20% of the global, if you take the global perspective. So it's a significant contribution that the Caribbean region is making to that blue economy aspect. So it's important that we do the right thing here. And hence this region came to the top. And then it was also important for us to decide where to establish a center. We had good proposals from various countries. And of course, the UTT proposal came to the top, and we are glad it really worked well. And we are also very happy to see it is headed by a woman, actually, Ms. Vivian. And it's very important, especially for IMO this year. This is a year for we are empowering women in the maritime community. It goes very well with that, but also I'm very happy to see the gender balance here in this room, actually. We have a number of women leaders here, so very happy that you are all part of this effort here, so thank you. Now, I would like to just highlight a few things, what's happening in IMO. And Ambassador mentioned, and others mentioned the climate change, the global efforts, the Paris Treaty. We are all aware of that, but things are happening in the maritime sector as well. In IMO, I think it's 2018, we had the first resolution on IMO initial strategy on emission from maritime transport. And that was quite an important lead taken by the maritime sector. I can't think of another sector having very specific numbers of targets of reducing emission from a particular sector. Of course, shipping is one of the most energy efficient mode of transportation. The sector only contributes 2.2% of the emissions as per 2012 estimates, but the sector is growing. The potential for much more increased emissions from the sector is there. Hence, IMO and the member states took this decision to have the strategy developed, and soon then things started progressing in IMO. Last year, IMO also, in addition to the developing strategy, the strategy contains a vision of 50% reduction of the emissions by 2050 compared to the 2008 emission standards. So we need to peak fast and then grow, go down very fast and phase out as soon as possible the emission from the sector. So that's quite a high ambition strategy there. The strategy didn't remain as a strategy in the IMO discussion. Soon the member states developed a follow-up action program last year, which include many streams of actions where the countries are looking into short-term, medium-term, and long-term measures how to address emissions from shipping. And one of those streams is technical cooperation capacity building that can start very soon. And you'll be very pleased to note that in this very important strategy that the world has adopted in IMO last year, MTCC was very specifically mentioned and captured in the strategy. The role of MTCC in delivering the IMO GHG strategy, and that was a significant achievement. I don't think it would have been there in the strategy if it was not for the efforts of the countries in progressing the objectives of the MTCC. So that's a very good achievement, I would say. The strategy also has a link to the Paris Climate Treaty. And so the role of MTCC in achieving IMO initial strategy or contributing to it, and through that, connecting to the Paris climate goals is also important. And at the same time, contributing to the SDGs that you are aware of, the SDG 13 and also 14, because the ocean acidification from climate change. So all that is important targets where MTCC can play a role. Now, I would like to take a little bit of attention on, we know that we have done very well. We have achieved a lot. and where we should be heading and how we should be heading. And this is a question that we will present to you, and that we really hope that we can discuss the next few days' time, because sustaining the efforts of MTCC is at most important for continuing our good efforts in this region. And that needs the cooperation, collaboration from a large number of players, not just IMO, not just UTT, not just Trinidad, but all the countries in this region, and not just the maritime administrations, but the private sector as well. And only through this collective and collaborative effort that we can win this battle, and we can do much further. The challenges that was posed 3 years back of establishing 5 centers and doing all these activities around the world, it was a huge challenge. But what we have now, it has shown, demonstrated, is that these challenges are difficult, but they are not impossible. Just as you have demonstrated here, through effective and collaborations, and through very intelligent and clever use of resources, we can win this battle. And I think we should win this battle, because there is another alternative for us in addressing climate change. We don't have another planet. With that, I would leave the sustainability question to all of you. It is important that we sustain these efforts, and I do hope the next few days of discussions will contribute to the sustainability, in addition to taking stock what we have done so far. It's encouraging, but we have a long road to go. So once again, thank you very much. Thanks to EU for the continued support all these years. Thank you, UTT, for hosting this and making it a success. And thanks to all of the countries here who are present here, who really brought the MTCC Caribbean family spirit here in terms of collaboration and support. And we hope it will continue on. And thank you very much for listening to me. It was a bit too long than I expected, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mathaikal. And I'd like to welcome, finally, Professor Jin Yongxing, Chairman of MTCC Asia and International Maritime Lecturers Association, our sister MTCC, to the podium. Please welcome him warmly.
Respected Professor Julian, Chairman of the Board of Governors, UTT, respected Professor Imbert, Deputy Chairman of the Board of Governors, UTT, Mr. Ambassador Billsbrook, Head of Delegation of the EU to Trinidad and Tobago, and dear Dr. Jules Merkel, Deputy Director of IMO Maritime Environment Division, Mr. Anton, Head of the PCU of IMO JMN, dear Ms. Vivi, Director and Head of MTCC Caribbean, dear participant, friend, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to you. It is a great honor and a pleasure for me to be here in MTCC Caribbean. First of all, please allow me, on behalf of the MTCC Asia, the International Maritime Lecturer Association, and Shanghai Maritime University, to express my many thanks to the Trinidad and Tobago University, and together with the MTCC Caribbean and the partner organization, for holding this very timely and very important second regional workshop. I have to confess that my feelings today are like the tide at sea, sometimes high and sometimes low, bring me vividly back to the exciting moment 3 years ago when we cooperated together for the great idea of IMO JMN. I can clearly feel the puzzle of that, the feeling, if we recall the tireless and commitment effort we pumped into the MTCCs, which I'm assume is certainty that we and you delighted to the program so successfully by MTCC Caribbean. For example, you have mapped the current baseline on use of ship energy efficient technology, which can instrumental to the decision making of GHG emission control in the region of Caribbean. You have conducted a ship fuel consumption data collection and reporting pilot project for the region. This will also at the regional flag state in development of reporting line as a requirement by IMO regulation, since reporting the ship fuel consumption and computing GHG emission is the first step on achieving the efficient use of fuel for ship. And you have hosted regional and workshop which very effectively to improve our ability and capacity to protect our ocean, and so on. Therefore, please also allow me to congratulate you on successful accomplishing to the IMO GMG program in addressing the GHG emission from ships as required by IMO program. This is a landmark for the maritime sector within the Caribbean regions. MTCC Asia and MTCC Caribbean were both approved, firstly approved by IMO in 2016. As one of the first announcements of two MTCCs, I would like to share the work we have accomplished under the guidance of PCU. Since the MTCC Asia launched in May 2017, we have established two branch offices of MTCC Asia in Cambodia and Myanmar in 2017 and 2018 respectively. We have completed the ship trim optimization guidance, which recently, which is an efficient tool for seafarer and authorities on the use of ship energy efficiency technology. We have completed the ship fuel consumption data collection and reporting guidance based on the about 60,000 set of the real data collection from container ship, bulk carrier, and oil tanker. We have carried out one regional workshop and 3 national workshops and trainees program, and we enrolled 9 postgraduate students from Maritime Administration Authority of Asia country, and so on. Looking back, it is essential that we recall the voyage where we start sailing, that is, the initial and original intent of the GMN MTCCs. MTCCs are formally created by the project of the capacity building for climate mitigation in maritime shipping industry, which are funded by European Union and implemented by the IMO. The objective are to build the capacity each maritime technology cooperation center and also collaborate with academic institution, commercial and shipping company, governmental department, and authorities, as well as other stakeholders, and most important, with the IMO body regarding the issue of the climate change. I believe such recall provides us an opportunity of maintain and peace of mind, a chance for us to look ahead and short break of peace in our battlefield for the next charge. In my understanding, MTCC are build capacity for low carbon shipping technology to transfer the capacity as wider outreach as possible. The world stands at the crossroad today when it comes to energy and climate change. Indeed, we are standing there with the rest of the world. At this crossroad, we have a choice to make. It is more than clear that we are not in a good place. Sea ice is shrinking, permanent frost is melting, glaciers are disappearing, and the primary cause of this change is emission of GHGs from our factories, power plants, ships, and other vehicles, and so on. We can continue with a business as usual or status quo approach to energy and climate issue. If that is what we choose, we will continue to face not only the same questions and the same concern about environmental and climate change, but also energy-related risk to our economic and jobs. In this content, it is our belief that GMM MTCC has very reason to continuing the moment of works on this important issue is sure to bring IMO initial strategies at the hand of our human being. Based on what we have accomplished on GHG emission control from ships and the data collecting system, the GMN MTCC is bound to be an efficient system and a systematic arrangement to combat ship GHG emission. Here, I earnestly invited MTCC Caribbean and other MTCCs to continue our per set work. Dear friend, dear colleagues, there is one famous Chinese saying that is, "For prepared is for armed." Put it simple English, it means that preparedness is all. Time is ripe for us to work out a heightened plan to commitment under the guidance of IMO and supported by EU. In conclusion, may I take this opportunity to offer my heartfelt thanks to organizing committee and the staff to make this regional workshop possible and successful. And I'm sure as a MTCC Asia and other MTCCs, we will learn a lot from MTCC Caribbeans. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Prof. Shin. I would like to ask you all now to bear with us a little as we take some photos while we all still look very, very pretty this morning before coffee break. So I would like us to gather in two groups. I would ask my panel from on stage to gather in front of the stage at this point, or just right in front of the screen. Okay, I'd now like to ask everyone to join us in front of the stage for the next photo. That way. So what our photographer is asking is that you all come down and fill the seats to the front in the meantime. I'm seeing some seats still available in our third and fourth rows. So those at the back, can you come down and fill them in a little bit, please? So I'd like everybody to grab a seat, please. Filling the first rows and second rows. Yes, everybody. Yeah, first rows and second rows. Okay. All right, so with that, you may proceed to your coffee break. Coffee break is half an hour, so we ask that you are back in the auditorium at 11. And those of you who have not signed the registration sheet or collected your registration tags, please do so during coffee break. Thank you.
Sound check one. Sound check. Sound check one.
If you keep the volume down also, it
Yeah. Sound check one.
won't happen.
So you're gonna put it, yeah?
I used to do the class from here, man. So we can
Sound check one. Sound check.
Hi, everyone. Hello? Could you take that off and put the mic volume on? Could you take that off and put the mic volume on?
All right. You speak.
Yeah.
You should have already uploaded.
Yeah. This remote? This?
Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Well, I don't know. Somebody put it under there. So I see a remote, so say okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for gathering back on time. We will now be starting our next session, Outcomes of MTCC Caribbean's Capacity Building Initiatives and Pilot Projects. For this session, we have Mr. Anton Rhodes of the Global MTCC Network, presenting on the status of the Global MTCC Network, Mrs. Vivian Rambarat Parasram from MTCC Caribbean, giving the preliminary report on MTCC Caribbean's capacity building initiatives, and Captain Singh, also of MTCC Caribbean, who is going to present on MTCC Caribbean's technical deliverables. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Anton Rhodes of the GMN to the podium.
Okay. Okay. No. Yep. Okay. Can you hear me okay? No, not yet. No. Testing. Yep. Okay. There we go. Okay. Thanks very much for that introduction. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. I'd just like to start by thanking MTCC for hosting what I'm sure will be another very successful regional workshop. I was very lucky to be here 2 years ago when they had the launch of the MTCC. And, you know, from our project team perspective at IMO, we've been really impressed with what has been achieved over the last 2 years by the MTCC. And I just want to use this opportunity to thank MTCC Caribbean for all they've achieved, because from our project coordination unit, they've really been one of the shining stars, and they've made our life so much easier by performing so well. So I just want to recognize that now to Vivian and Sukhjit and all of the team. Thank you very much. So the main purpose of this presentation is to give you an overview of the wider network. So over the next 2 days, we'll be focusing quite rightly on what's happening in the Caribbean. But I'd like to just kind of give you that wider perspective of what's happening in the other MTCC regions. Before I get into the details of the MTCC network, I'd also like to give an update on IMO developments. You know, Joe's touched on quite a few of these points during his presentation, but I think it's important that we look at some of these regulation and policy developments because they have such an important impact on the work of the MTCCs. So I'm sure, as you're all aware, IMO's initial GHG strategy was adopted in April 2018. And this really sets out a vision for where we want to be in terms of the shipping sector over the next 30 years. Within the strategy, we have very ambitious targets, such as a 50% reduction from emissions from shipping by 2050. Now, with this strategy, what IMO has done is really set out very ambitious targets. We want to see initially a stabilization of emissions from shipping, and then ultimately we want to start seeing that reduction. We have the very clear targets in mind, and now the focus of IMO is on how we achieve that. So obviously, this was quite a major development for the organization. It received a lot of media attention and really put IMO in the spotlight in terms of this wider issue of global warming. The big question that comes on the back of that is what will IMO do now to implement this very ambitious strategy? So on the immediate agenda, as follow-up to the strategy, is to focus on implementing a program of actions which are focusing on short, medium, and long-term measures. So the type of measures that are now being focused on, discussed within the Marine Environment Protection Committee, strengthening the EEDI requirements, energy efficiency requirements, focusing on the use of speed optimization and speed reduction, looking at incentives for first movers to develop and uptake new technologies. And there's also a big focus on capacity building and technical cooperation. And in this particular area, there's a real emphasis on what might be achieved